Have you ever been on top of a building? Not literally, but in that moment when all that separates you from where you want to be is a single step, and you just freeze. It's 3 a.m. and you're lying in bed with your phone in your hand, ready to send that message that could change everything. Or you're standing in front of your boss's door, with your resignation letter in your pocket, but your feet feel glued to the floor. Or maybe it's that course you want to take, that relationship you need to end, that conversation you've been avoiding for months. Miles Morales knows exactly what it's like. He's standing on top of a 650-foot skyscraper, the wind biting his face, New York City stretching out endlessly below him like an ocean of lights. And the only thing standing between him and truly becoming Spider-Man is letting go of his hands and jumping. But he can't. His knuckles are white from gripping the edge of the building. His heart is pounding so hard he can feel it in his temples. And his mind is screaming the same question it screamed in his head 1,000 times. What if I'm not ready? What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? And here's what no one tells you about the defining moments of your life. The question, am I ready? Will always have the same answer. No, we never will be. Because if we were truly ready, it wouldn't be a leap of faith, it would just be a logical step. Over the next 15 minutes, we'll decode the psychology behind the most important leap in modern pop culture. You'll discover exactly why Miles couldn't jump, even though he had all of Spider-Man's powers. You'll understand what really happened in that transformative moment that changed everything. And most importantly, you'll learn how to apply this same psychological formula to unlock your own potential and stop living in the "I'm not ready yet" paralysis. Because there's a Jungian secret hidden in this scene that can completely change the way you view your own leaps of faith. And when you understand that secret, you'll realize that what's stopping you from taking the leap isn't the fear of falling, it's something much deeper and much more liberating to resolve. Look at this image for a second. Miles is trying on the Peter Parker costume, and it's painfully obvious that it doesn't fit. The sleeves are too long, covering his hands like he's a kid wearing his dad's clothes. The costume is baggy across the chest, bunched up at the shoulders, and he moves like he's wearing an ill-fitting Halloween costume. But look at his body language, the slumped shoulders, the insecure posture, the way he avoids looking directly at the mirror. This isn't just physical discomfort, it's existential discomfort. And here's the thing. How many times have you felt exactly like this? Maybe it was that meeting where you tried to sound like your boss, using jargon that isn't part of your natural vocabulary. Or when you went on a date and tried to be the version of yourself that you thought the other person wanted. Or when you were at a party pretending to enjoy conversations that didn't interest you, laughing at jokes that you didn't find funny, trying to fit into the cray your parents chose for you, even though you wake up every day with a heavy heart, forcing yourself into a relationship that everyone says is perfect for you, but that leaves you emotionally drained, using a version of yourself that might work for a while, but that just isn't you. This is imposter syndrome in action, and it has one particularly cruel twist. The harder you try to force the fit, the more obvious it becomes that you don't belong. It's like trying to force a puzzle piece into the wrong place. You know it's not right. You can feel the resistance, but you keep pushing because you believe the problem is with you, not the mold. And worst of all, you start to believe that there's something fundamentally wrong with you, that you should be able to fit in, that other people can. So why can't you? Miles looks in the mirror and sees Peter Parker staring back at him. And we do the same thing every day. We look in the mirror and see the expectations of others, the standards we never chose. The version of ourselves we think we should be, but that sucks the life energy out of us every time we try to embody it. That feeling of wearing borrowed clothes in your own life, of playing a role you never heard, of waking up every day and having to remember how to act because being yourself doesn't seem like an option. That pain you feel when you try to be someone you're not. It's real. It's valid. And it's not a flaw in you, it's an alarm bell from your own psyche, screaming that you're betraying your essential nature. And it is precisely this pain that will become your greatest ally. Because it is the first sign that you are ready for your own leap of faith. Let's go back to the beginning of Miles' story. He's on the subway, doing his graffiti, completely absorbed in his art. And then, the AP, the radioactive spider, bites him. On the surface, it seems like an accident, but in archetypal language. This is what Joseph Campbell would call the call to adventure. That moment when the universe literally forces you out of your comfort zone. And here's what's fascinating about Miles' psychology. He doesn't want to answer that call. He wants to go back to his normal life, to continue being just the kid who does graffiti on the subway, who goes to school, who has a predictable and safe life, and that's perfectly normal. The call to adventure is rarely welcome because it always comes to take us away from the very thing that gives us a sense of control. Miles had his routine, his small but genuine passions, his little world where he knew who he was. Suddenly he has powers he didn't ask for, responsibilities he didn't choose, and everyone is expecting him to become something he never imagined he could be. It's as if the universe has looked at the life he's carefully constructed and said, "No, this isn't enough. You're bigger than this." And then Peter B. Parker enters, and guys, what entrance is this? In the Jungian framework, he perfectly represents the archetype of the wounded mentor, one who has already walked the path, who has already failed spectacularly, who bears the scars of the journey, but who possesses something invaluable, the wisdom that only comes from suffering transformed into knowledge. Peter B. isn't the perfect hero of the original comics. He's divorced, depressed, addicted to pizza, constantly questioning his own choices. He lost the woman he loved, made mistakes that still haunt him, and carries the weight of all the people he couldn't save. And that's exactly why he's the perfect mentor for Miles, because Miles doesn't need someone who's never failed. He needs someone who's failed and kept going. He doesn't need cheap inspiration about believing in yourself. He needs someone who can look him in the eye and say, "I know what it's like to be afraid of not being enough, because I've been enough so many times." And when Peter talks about the leap of faith, notice the tone. It's not motivational. It's not epic. It's almost melancholy. Because he knows he's asking Miles to do something that will change his life forever, in ways he can't yet imagine. Because when Peter talks about the leap of faith, he's not just talking about jumping off a building. He's sharing the one truth he's learned after years of being Spider-Man, that you never feel ready to become who you really are. That courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action in spite of fear. But here's what even Peter didn't know at that moment, and what we'll discover together in the next layers of this analysis. The real solution wouldn't come from him. It wouldn't come from advice, no matter how wise. It would come from within Miles himself, from a place he didn't yet have the courage to access. Because the secret to taking a leap of faith isn't overcoming fear, it's understanding that fear is not your enemy, it's just the guardian of your comfort zone, trying to protect you from a transformation your soul is desperately asking for. The term leap of faith doesn't come from comics. It was coined by Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard in the 19th century, and the story behind the phrase is fascinating. Kierkegaard was dealing with a profound existential crisis. He was engaged to a woman he loved, Regina Olsen, but he couldn't bring himself to marry her, not because he didn't love her, but because he felt he would have to betray something fundamental in himself to live the life society expected of him. For Kierkegaard, the leap of faith was the moment when you stop trying to rationalize your existence and simply choose to live according to your deepest truth, even if it means disappointing everyone around you, even if it means entering unknown territory. He said a phrase that has become legendary: life can only be understood by looking back, but it must be lived by looking forward. In other words, you will never be sure if you're making the right decision until after you have already made it. Carl Jung, decades later, took this concept even further with his theory of individuation, the psychological process of becoming who you really are, rather than a poorly made copy of someone else. And here Jung made a discovery that forever changed how we understand human personality. Jung discovered that we all develop what he called a persona, a social mask we create in order to be accepted by the world. This mask is not necessarily false. It contains real parts of who we are, but it is only a small fraction of our wholeness. Beneath this mask is what he called the self, our true essence, our complete personality, including parts that may not be socially acceptable but are fundamentally ours. And here's the insider knowledge that most people don't have. Jung discovered that the persona is like a medicine. In small doses, it's useful. It helps us navigate socially, be professional when we need to be, adapt to different contexts. But when you live exclusively through the persona, when you forget that there is a self beneath it, you develop what Jung called neurosis, a disconnection from your own essence that manifests as anxiety, depression, feelings of emptiness, or that feeling that you are living someone else's life. And now comes the connection that changes everything. Miles in the Peter Parker suit is pure persona. He's trying to be the version of Spider-Man that the world expects, that has precedent, that is safe because it's already been tested and approved. But the leap of faith he needs to take is not physical. It is psychological. It is ontological. It is the courage to shed the mask that does not belong to him and embrace who he really is. Even if it means disappointing the expectations of others. Even if it means creating something new that has never been tried before. And here's the secret that few understand about the process of individuation. You don't discover who you are by thinking about you discover who you are by acting, in spite of fear, by choosing the authentic unknown over the inauthentic known. Miles couldn't jump like Peter Parker because you can't have true faith in a lie. You can only have real confidence when you're acting from your authentic center, even if that center is still a mystery to you. And then we get to the scene. What's up? Danger. But before the music, before the epic leap, you have a moment that goes unnoticed by most people, but which is psychologically revolutionary. Miles is cutting his own hair. It may seem like a small detail, but listen carefully. He is literally shedding the image he had of himself. The hair he grew trying to be Peter Parker is being cut off. He is physically freeing himself from the persona that no longer serves him. And then comes the most important moment. He's creating his own costume, not modifying Peter's, not trying to fix what doesn't fit, creating something completely new, with his own colors, his own style, his own visual identity. Look at what's happening here in the psychology of transformation. Miles is no longer trying to fill a void left by Peter Parker. He's no longer trying to be a 2.0 version of someone who already existed. He's creating something that never existed before. And here's the psychological truth that changes everything. Miles couldn't jump when he was trying to be someone else because you can't have faith in a lie. You can't genuinely trust something that isn't you. But when he puts on the costume he created, when he looks in the mirror and sees Miles staring back at him, not Peter, not an imitation, but himself at his most powerful, something fundamental changes in his neurochemistry. The anxiety that came from the inner conflict between who he was and who he was trying to be simply disappears, because there is no more conflict, there is alignment. When he finally jumps, notice the difference. He's not falling in fear like before. He's not fighting gravity. He's dancing with it. The physics hasn't changed. The building is the same height. The ground is still hard. But the psychology has changed completely. When you stop fighting who you are and start embracing it, when you stop trying to fit into someone else's mold and start creating your own mold, the whole world changes around you. Now, pause the video for a second. Seriously, pause it. Look round you. How many things in your life right now are the Peter Parker costume? How many choices have you made trying to be the version of yourself you thought you should be, instead of the version of yourself you actually are? What's your leap of faith? That thing you know you need to do, but keep putting it off because you don't feel ready. It could be leaving a job that's stifling you to pursue that passion you've been hiding from. It could be starting that creative project you've been putting on hold for months because you're afraid you're not good enough. It could be having a difficult conversation you've been avoiding because it could change your relationship forever. And here's the hard truth. You'll never feel ready, ever. If you wait until you feel ready, you'll wait forever. But here's your first micro step. Not the full leap, just the first move in the direction of your authenticity. Identify one action you can do today, in the next 30 minutes, that represents who you really are, not who you think you should be. It could be sending that email you've been putting off for weeks. It could be researching that course you're interested in but that seems impractical. It could be having a 5-minute conversation with someone about a topic that really matters to you, because here's what Miles teaches us. The leap of faith doesn't happen all at once. It starts with the courage to stop imitating and start creating. It starts with micro acts of authenticity that, when accumulated, take you to the top of your own building, ready to fly with your own wings. Look at Miles now. See how he moves, how he flies, how he exists in the world. There's a lightness, a naturalness, a joy that just wasn't there when he was trying to be Peter Parker. But it's not just joy. It's something deeper. It's presence. It's the difference between someone who is performing and someone who is being. When you watch the flying scene, pay attention to the details. Miles isn't just moving through the air, he's playing with the air. He's making moves that Peter Parker never made. Discovering possibilities that only exist when you stop trying to copy someone else and start exploring who you are. This is the physics of authenticity. When you stop wasting energy trying to be someone else, all that energy becomes available to you to discover what you are truly capable of. This is what Jung called authenticity, and it's the greatest psychological benefit there is. It's not just being yourself in the superficial sense that self-help preaches. It's something much more radical. It's the complete integration of who you are inside and how you act in the world. When this happens, several things change simultaneously in your psychology. First, imposter syndrome disappears because you're no longer trying to fit into a mold that is not yours. You are the mold. You are the pattern of your own life. Second, social anxiety decreases dramatically because you are no longer constantly monitoring whether you are doing it right according to some else's standards. You are operating from your own center. Third, your energy increases exponentially because you're no longer fighting your own nature. It's like swimming with the current instead of against it. But most importantly of all, and this is something that only those who have gone through this transformation fully understand, you begin to attract people and opportunities that resonate with who you really are, not who you are pretending to be. Relationships become deeper because you are no longer hiding parts of yourself. Work becomes more satisfying because you are contributing your unique talents, not trying to be a lesser version of someone else. Remember the photo from the beginning. Miles, uncomfortable in his ill-fitting outfit, moving as if he were wearing borrowed clothes, avoiding looking in the mirror because his reflection wasn't real. Remember the feeling that this evoked in you, that familiar pain of living a life that isn't yours, of waking up every day and having to remember how to act because being yourself didn't seem like an option. Now watch him fly in the suit he designed himself, which fits perfectly because it was made by him and for him. The difference is not just visual, it is existential. He is no longer wasting energy trying to be someone else. He is no longer monitoring himself to see if he is doing it right. He simply is, and that's the promise of the leap of faith. On the other side of your courage to be who you really are, there's a version of your life that you can even imagine right now. A version where you're no longer wearing someone else's borrowed clothes, but flying with your own wings. When you finally embrace who you are no longer living someone else's life with less intensity. You are living your life with all the intensity it deserves. So here's the lesson Miles teaches us, and it could change everything for you. You don't jump because you became the hero. You became the hero because you jumped. The leap of faith is not about having the courage to face the world. It's about having the courage to face yourself, to stop hiding behind the persona you've built and start living from your authentic self. Miles discovered that the only difference between standing paralyzed on top of the building and soaring through the skies of New York was the willingness to trust who he really was, instead of trying to be who he thought he should be. But here's a question that will keep you awake tonight. What if the leap of faith is just the first step out of your prison? What if the prison itself is an illusion? Once you learn how to jump, the next question is, what reality are you jumping to? If this video helped you identify your own leap of faith, leave a like and tell me in the comments what the first micro step you're going to take today is, and subscribe to the channel because we're just beginning to decode the psychological secrets hidden in pop culture. Your leap of faith is waiting for you. The only question is, will you take the first step